that where people can still cling on to an ethnic identity, or is that just is that just heresy, right?
It's heresy, and the Christian establishment is going to fight you at every turn and stand in your way and throw you out of the church and call you a satanic heretic. And that is what happens. Some Christian e-crusader on the internet is saying racist stuff. If they tried that in their churches, they'd be thrown out and censured and condemned. And yes, it's replaced everybody's ethnic tribal identities, and along with their traditions and their myths and their gods, into universal Jewish Messiah worship. That's what Christianity and Judaism is in a nutshell, is universal, the whole world, globalism. Jewish Messiah globalism is what Christianity and Islam Christianity, Islam, and Judaism ultimately are. And it's replaced European and everybody's identities with becoming, their identity is to be spiritual Jews and to be sheep following the Jewish shepherd. And it's not, you mentioned the Schofield Bible too. Everybody likes to scapegoat and blame.
Yeah, that's right. Sorry, I forgot that part of it. Yeah, but what do you make of that? Like, because honest question, really, then, right? If here's the message, here's God's revelation, right, kind of thing, or I think you phrased it like this too. I think you were talking about it or something similar, and it kind of dawned on me as like that. Did the Schofield Bible trick God? Or God's message, I guess, right? Was that what happened, or how do we explain that? I guess you see what I'm saying. Is that
no? So Jesus came to earth, God's ultimate plan: send Jesus to earth, have His chosen people reject Him, open up salvation, goes to the Gentiles. But then, God created Satan too, and he's in charge of earth, and he's corrupting everything. So Jesus is just up in heaven, looking down from a cloud, like, "No, Schofield, the Rothschilds rewrote the Bible," which is a lie. It's Schofield Bible. If your Bible is able to be, and your religion is able to be subverted by a couple footnotes, then maybe it had problems to begin with. If it becomes completely subverted and kosher just because of a couple reference notes, then it had issues. It had problems to begin with, and it was already Jewish. And they cope so much. People act like, oh, the Bible before Schofield never said Jesus was Jewish. Yeah, it does. Definitely does. That's a lie. And to think you can't overcome just a couple footnotes, and that God's ultimate plan, all it takes is like a different interpretation, and it's all completely corrupted, then maybe it wasn't, is he incompetent? Did he allow this to happen? He couldn't have more clearly written his message so something like Christian Zionism wouldn't happen. So, the cope will be, they're not real Christians. Christian Zionists aren't real Christians, but there is no real Christian. And they're the ones with all the real power, and their agenda is very real and being moved forward. And calling them the no true Scotsman of not real Christians just isn't cutting it, and ultimately like running cover for what's going on. And the cope about one more thing. Yeah. There's no such thing as Judeo-Christian values, right? They'll really cope on that. It is a fact that Christianity was started by all Jews. It's worshiping the Jewish Messiah. It affirms the Jewish Old Testament. They call themselves spiritual Jews. They're worshiping King David, who was the king of Judah. It's an offshoot Judaism for Gentiles, Noahide laws for the world. It's Jewish. It is Judeo-Christian. Stop coping and pretending like it didn't come from Jews.
Yeah, there's a number of things here in terms of the ethnicity, right, or like how we've lost that, and of course part of that is the message of charity, also obviously within the church, right? Has it been a net negative or net positive? That's where I'm trying to look at it from as well.
Charity can be good, and charity was also in pagan traditions as well, right?
No, of course, absolutely. But when it's now, look, the church has or any religion, really, any tradition, right? As long as it's old enough, have kind of it's valid because it's in the distant past, right? That makes it more fun, like kind of, it's harder to understand it. There's an aura of mystique around it, right? And with that, you kind of grant that comes with almost not authority, but like credibility or appeal almost of sorts, right? It's more harder to figure out. If some of these things would happen today, I think it would be many more people would be like, "What the hell is this?" Kind of thing, right? Mm-hmm. But regardless, it is what it is. So they have a little bit of a tradition, and it's also this idea then that the tradition that's weaved into it happens to it's the advantage that it was like it's 2,000 years ago or 1,500 years ago, when obviously there was more traditional time as well. But what has happened now is then it's always reinterpreted. There's a new spin on it. We've seen most of the established denominations and churches go down kind of a quote unquote, I hate to use the word, but like a woke path, right? It's like, no, actually open borders is good. Actually, you should sit down with the trannies and the gays, and, Lutherans do this, Episcopals do this, the Pope does this, and all that kind of stuff. There was a message from the U.S. bishops recently, a special message on immigration out of some plenary session they had in Baltimore. And it was just like this, it's inhumane. And keep in mind too now, when we talk about this, they're coming down on Trump's deportation of illegals that have also, in addition, committed crimes, right? That's apparently what ICE is doing, right? Kind of thing. And it's this weird thing when you look at it that, like, no, they're brown, therefore this is more important. We have to be charitable. This is inhumane, as I said. This is horrible. But, like, what about the victims of those criminal migrants? Be that drugs, be that rape, be that murder, be the people that don't have licenses, drives into crowds, whatever the hell it is that's going on. There's no consideration for that whatsoever. And it's like this, well, we must help them because that's our mission. And you might have some Christians that say, well, I don't agree with that, yeah, fine, but your institutions are the ones pushing it, right? I mean, look at how many, we talk about Hayas all the time, and many of these Jewish groups that are helping to bring in migrants. Mm-hmm. But I mean, the secondary to that, it's basically is a lot of Christian groups as well. I did a short list with just few of the top 5 Christians groups. I can rattle off a couple of them here too, and just the amount of money that they have, right? The United States Conference of Catholic Bishops, which is the article I just showed, right? They received about $129.6 million in 2023. That's the latest numbers we have. Most of that is government funding, by the way, so we're paying for it in order to, resettle refugees. You have the Episcopal Migration Ministries that have received over $50 million. That's $50 million annually, apparently. Mostly federal government grants there as well. The Church World Service, $96 million, mostly in grants. The Global Refugee, which is the former Lutheran Immigration and Refugee Services, about $232 million. Holy shit, that's a lot of money, right? And then you have the Bethany Christian Services, about $77.3 million. And that's actively being used to demographically replace us. It looks like internally, if there's a, Christian versus pagan schism, and we talk about this a lot, kind of thing, like, is there any way to bridge this? Is there any way to put race over religion or folk before faith, things like this, right? But it looks like those who are at least anti-immigrant critical, those who are also critical of replacement, they have their work cut out for them in terms of what they should be trying to reform themselves inside of their own institutions. Am I right?
Absolutely. No, absolutely. And I'm pretty sure like the vast majority of all the money is going through most of the NGOs, and most of the statistically is Christian groups doing all of this. And the sad thing is, what I notice is even the supposedly like most based in red pill Christians online that are like, know about the JQ, and they're not the kosher Christians, right? Like E. Michael Jones or Pastor Steven Anderson. You go see what their rhetoric is on the racial topic, and it's like astonishing. It's not even like neutral or like reasonable because of the Christianity. They're like active, like liberal anti-racist, like to the extreme. Like they get off on virtue signaling about like, oh, it doesn't matter, like if you're whatever, as long as you believe in Jesus, as long as the immigrants believe in Jesus, if people on the other side of the world are being persecuted or dying, like they don't care. But if they're Christians in Nigeria, then it's our problem and we have to go save it. Like,
well, we saw that recently, right? I mean, nothing has come of it so far, but it was at least rumors of like intervention in Nigeria because the Christians are being killed there, right? So, shouldn't they up South Africa?
If they were Muslims, would we go do it? No, but because they believe in Jesus, like the version of Jesus as Christians do, now it's like it's their problem also.
I think America should help Europe then kick out the Muslims or something. It's like, do that then or something, right? To go to the mother continent. There should be a relationship between America and Europe, but that's a different topic. You linked up this clip. We
have funded a lot of Christians in Ukraine against Russia, but they're Christian too. Dude, it's crazy. I did a video. I don't know if you saw it, but America has their war propaganda videos, and they're doing prayers and praying to Jesus and bless us, Jesus. It's same with Ukraine propaganda videos, and same with Russia. All with theirs had Muslims in it too in Russia, but
Well, that's
all worshiping this same God, ready for a prophetic war against one another. And the rabbis are like sitting back, like in the middle of it, like, okay, we're going to win. This is it.
Well, that important point too, and I'm glad you brought that up because I was thinking about it earlier. Obviously, we've seen intra-religious wars and different denominations then coming out of this after the conversion, that it never seems good enough. I was talking about an example of Alaric I in our Western Warrior show, which was interesting because he managed to kind of bring together a wide range of different tribes, different tongues or whatever, like to basically go sack Rome right around 410. And it was this idea kind of unity, but they had converted to Arianism before that, right? Because it was kind of close enough. It was like it was Wulfius. They had the Silver Codex, the Silver Bible, and some of the Goths were kind of like convinced it's like, well, it's kind of basically like Odin, Thor, and Freya, but we have like it's God, Mary, and Jesus, or to that effect. But that became a heretical tradition not too long after that. And then they were hunted, and then they were persecuted too. There's many denominations where they, and this is true for everything, I guess, to a certain extent, but still, just as a historical, to be historically accurate here in terms of the topic that we're talking about, that it's also not, unifying. How many white people have died over fighting over different versions, right? Like take the 30 Years' War in Europe, for example. Mm-hmm. Millions of Europeans that have died over this, and it never seems to be good enough. And in fact, it kind of bleeds into even up to today, whereas, as you mentioned before, now you have different versions of Christians calling each other pagans, as you said before, and they're fighting internally. And I think that's going to actually get worse as we move forward, as some try to kind of break away from, let's say, the Israel support, right? They're Christian, but they don't believe that that's Israel isn't legitimate, so it's like kind of an anti-Zionist Christian movement. And those schisms, I think, will be even worse as well. I can almost see like kind of a new denomination, maybe if it continues long enough, I guess, to come out of that. And then you have another intra-Christian war, essentially. What's your thoughts on that? Do you think it's going to continue in the years? Is it going to get worse and worse?
Oh, I don't think it'll ever end. It'll never end. It hasn't for 1,700 years. For 2,000 years, Christianity started as a schism within Judaism, and it just continues having schisms and causing division. Because when you have the belief in a monotheistic God, it's like that's the only way, and anybody that against you is satanic and evil and needs to be destroyed. So, like you mentioned earlier, the schism between Christians and pagans. That hasn't started online on the internet. That's been going on since Christianity first started.
Right.
And I think if you just read the scriptures, that seems to be the point of Jesus. In Matthew, it says, I came not to bring peace, send peace on earth. I came to, I butchered this so bad. It's KJV. That's why. Think not that I come to send peace on earth. I came not to send peace, but a sword, and set man against his father and daughter against her mother. And there will be war in their own household. Right. And then in Luke, same thing, did not come to bring peace, but the sword and division. So and that's all it's done. The wars and the death between Christian Catholics and Protestants, arguing over minor differences in Jewish scriptures, over Jewish fairy tales. And then the Eastern Orthodox Catholic schism as well, Protestant Reformation, Mormonism fighting with Christians. There's pro-Israel Christians and anti-Israel Christians, and then there's all the Christians versus all the non-believers. And what does Christianity do to the brains of our own people and our own nations? Now, because they believe in Jesus, they think that anybody that doesn't believe in the magical Jewish superhero is an evil, satanic, demonic, sinner that needs to be destroyed and is gonna bow and stuff. So it's caused endless division. We point out how divisive it is. We point out how subversive and fake it is and Jewish it is. And that's like the biggest cope that the e-crusaders will do, the Christians online, is you're causing division. That's what they say when they're losing the argument and they can't address the points that we're making. Jesus and Christianity is the one that instilled and injected this division, and we got to get rid of it.
Here was an interesting, I saw you played it on your show as well, but we could play it again for people because it's very interesting. It's a Norwegian pastor talking about his ancestors, and it's like this. Anyway, we'll play it and we'll talk about it after.